What's going on YouTube? It is your boy Brian Mark coming at you with another episode on this channel, and in today's episode I'm going to be talking to you guys about how I went from a trailer park with no vehicle to driving a Lambo and living in my dream mansion. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Let's go. So as you guys can see, I'm sitting in front of a trailer park right now, and I came here because I wanted to remember, what it felt like. And I spent the majority of my life growing up in a trailer park. I came from a background where my family loved me, and they were my family was the typical blue collar, work super hard and try to put food on the table. And that was kind of our mantra, it was we were just kind of working to survive. We always lived paycheck to paycheck growing up, didn't play any sports, and I always felt like I didn't have purpose. I always felt like I didn't belong. I didn't fit in with my environment. And so when I was younger, I was always the one that was kind of a little bit of an outcast, in the sense that we didn't have money, and so I would wear hand-me-down clothes at school, and I wasn't playing any sports because my family couldn't afford to, so I didn't really have any friends from community football teams or soccer teams or anything, and I was just kind of the outcast. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, and I didn't really know what my career was gonna be. I didn't really even see myself pursuing higher level education. Nobody in my family had gone to university up until the point that I came along. So when I mean nobody, I mean nobody in the last 3 generations. So university for me wasn't really even, I wasn't even considering it. But I knew that I wanted to do something different. I didn't know a lot, but one thing I did know was I was like, I'm not satisfied. That's one thing I did know. It's I'm not satisfied with where I'm at right now. I'm not satisfied living here. I'm not satisfied with the status of my body. I'm not satisfied. And so when I was 14 years old, I was living in a trailer park. I decided that I was overweight at the time. At 14, I had the awareness to be yo, I don't like this. I don't want to be fat anymore. So I stepped on the scale. I weighed 165 pounds and I was 5'1". And I remember looking down at the scale, 165 pounds, I can still see the scale to this day. And looking at myself in the mirror, I was this fat little black kid with little chubby cheeks, big afro. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was we're not doing this anymore. We're done. And I was I'm gonna lose this weight. I was I'm losing weight. I didn't know how to lose weight. I'm 14. So what I decided to do was I decided to put on my shoes and go for a run. And I want to talk about hope for a second, because I think that the entire purpose of me wanting to do these videos and wanting to share my journey with you is hope. And I remember when I was 14, my auntie, who was raising me, would always tell me about how my uncle, which was her brother, when he was my age, she's when your uncle was your age, he started working out, he started exercising, he was the most fit man at his school, and he went from the skinny little kid to this jacked kid, and he's at your age, that's what your uncle did. And that story gave me hope that I could do it too. But here nor there, 14 years old, decided to lose the weight, and losing the weight meant going for runs, drinking more water, eating smaller portion sizes, and committing to that. So I lost the weight, and I lost 30 pounds that summer. I went back to high school. Everyone thought I was the new kid. But that metamorphosis that I put myself through, the transformation, the pushing myself to run, sweating, dying, eating less food, drinking more water, cutting out pop, I did that myself in the summer. And coming back as a new person, I I remember like the feeling that I had when I started getting attention from girls, and people started noticing me, and everyone thought I was the new kid, but I was like, I'm not new. I was just fat last year. You guys didn't care. Now you guys like me. This tells me that I can transform. And I didn't know what that meant yet, but I had confidence. I was like, okay, like I can do shit. Like I can commit myself to an action, and then I can get, rewarded for it. So in high school, I started playing football, and I started playing football in high school, and I loved football. And it was the first sport I'd ever played in my life, and I was the worst player on the team in grade 10. I ended up becoming the most improved. Grade 11, I was the team captain. Grade 12, I was the team captain, and we went to city finals. So every single year, I progressively got better. But in high school, I got injured. And so after getting injured, I was gonna go to university to play football, and then when I got injured, I didn't end up going to even try out for university because I was so upset about it, and I didn't know how to handle adversity at the time. I'd never experienced anything like that. So 18, 19, 20, I ended up not going to university. I ended up not pursuing football. So I just got a job as a bartender because I'm like, bartending will allow me to travel the world, and one day my goal is to travel the world, so I'll start bartending so that I can travel the world and explore. So I moved out on my own with a few of my friends. We were just in this house together. I was bartending and partying, and I was still kind of lost at this time. 18, 19, 20, I still didn't really know what I wanted. I still didn't really know where my life was headed and what direction I was going. So I was kind of in this funk where I'm like, do I want to go back to school? Do I want to study? Do I want to play football? I didn't really know. And I felt very uncertain, and I felt very unsure. And so I decided, I was 19, 20 years old, and there was a period in my life where I used to stand at the bar and listen to other people on the other side of the bar talk. And I remember a conversation that I had with a guy, and he was talking about his life's regrets. He's telling me about all the things that he regretted. And I remember in that conversation, I was like, one thing I think I would regret for the rest of my life is if I thought about the fact that I wanted to be a pro football player, and I never actually chased that dream, and I never actually pushed myself, and I never actually saw if I could make it to the next level. And so 21 years old, I moved out to Kelowna. I tried out for the Okanagan Sun. I was a walk-on. I didn't even know if I was gonna make the team. I was 20 actually. Tried out for the Okanagan Sun, made the team, moved out to Kelowna, and I played for the Okanagan Sun for a season. Honestly, I wasn't very good because I'd taken 3 years off of high school. I cracked the second lineup, and then I started for a few games. But I was like, okay, there's something here. And so after playing for the Okanagan Sun, at this time I was still broke. I was working at Booster Juice playing football. And that was, honestly, I was happy doing it because I was chasing a dream. I came back to Calgary after playing football for the Okanagan Sun, and I started going super, super hard with my fitness. I was like, I'm gonna come back next year and people are gonna know who Brian Mark is. I was like, I'm coming in and and people are gonna know my name. I was deadlifting and squatting every 2 days. I was all in. I ended up putting on 35 pounds from one summer to the next, coming into the next Okanagan Sun football tryout. And when I came back, people were like, damn, this is you're a new beast. So I killed the spring camp. 2 weeks later, I came home. I was deadlifting 465, and I heard this it's a crack. I was like, what the f was that? I went to stand up, and I couldn't stand. I had to lay on the ground. I was like, oh, that did not feel good. I go home that night, and I can't walk. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Tried to lift weights, couldn't lift. I went to the chiropractor. My chiropractor's like, yeah, you locked your SI joint, and there's some nerve damage. So I'm sitting there, 2 weeks away from my second Okanagan Sun season, where I put in all this work, all this passion, all this energy. I was the most jacked I'd ever been in my entire life. I was ready 2 weeks before my Okanagan Sun season started, where I would have been that was the game that I would have played. I pulled my back. And I remember being so distraught for a week. I was just I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea. I was how, I was angry. I was how is God giving me this right now? What? I just worked my ass off for the last year, and 2 weeks before I'm about to achieve my dreams, boom, I get lower back gets pulled. So I'm sitting there one day, and I'm getting ready to go to the gym. And at this point, you know, I'd really been all in with my fitness goals for like 9 months, like training an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, like 6 meals a day. Like I was all the way in. I'm talking about like, I just didn't miss a beat. And I'm sitting there watching a bodybuilding motivation video because I used to watch bodybuilding motivation videos to get me ready to train for football because I wanted to like stay motivated. And so I would always watch bodybuilding motivation videos and then I'd go train. So I'm sitting there watching a bodybuilding motivation video in my apartment and it like clicked. I was like, why don't you do a fitness competition? I'm like, you're already, I literally had this conversation with myself in my head. I'm like, I'm already in shape. I'm like, I can't hit anybody. I was like, I can still work out. I'm like, and I still look good. So I'm like, why don't I do a fitness competition? So 9 weeks later, there was a fitness competition. I registered and I committed and I did my first fitness competition. And after my first fitness competition, I realized, I was like, holy shit, this is what I'm supposed to do. I was like, this is why the football thing didn't work out. So I was like, I was like, I'm gonna become a pro fitness model. So after my first fitness competition, I like committed to going pro. I was like, in my head, this is a fun walk down memory lane. I'm enjoying this. I hope you guys are enjoying this too. At this point, I didn't know how to win in my life. And by the way, one of the lessons I want you to take away from this is like, you gotta learn how to fail and you gotta learn how to fail good because you're gonna fail a lot if you really wanna be successful. So I told myself I wanted to be a pro. And when I told myself I wanted to be a pro, not only did I tell myself, I told everyone that would listen. I told everyone that would listen I was gonna be a professional fitness model. You know, every conversation that I'd be in, I was talking about how I wanted to be a professional fitness model. Every person that I met at the gym, they're like, what are you training for? I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be a professional fitness model. Every single person I told, and I was so set on it. I was like telling as many people as would possibly listen. And what was happening, and I didn't realize this, but what was happening at the time is the more that I talked about it, the more that I lost the motivation to do the actual work. Because it felt good for me to tell you that I'm gonna be a professional fitness model and for you to tell me that that's an awesome goal. And that feeling was so good that I kept chasing that feeling. And when it came down, like time to actually put the work in and actually do what would be necessary for me to go pro, I didn't want to do it. Because it felt better for me to talk to you about how I wanted it. Does that make sense? And so after I did my fitness competition that year, I didn't have anything else that I was moving towards. There wasn't a specific deadline. And so it gave me a little bit of like freedom in my head to be an idiot. So I started drinking and I started partying and I started doing drugs. And I was around the nightclubs and at that point, I was like, well, you know, like I hadn't done any drugs up to that point. I was like, I'm just gonna do a little bit of, I'm just gonna do a little bit of drugs, whatever. Like, it's not a big deal. And I was doing drugs, and this is another sick thing about the fitness industry, is there's a lot of like, quote unquote, fit people that are like cocaine addicts, and I'll just call a spade a spade. Because when I was, training for my fitness competitions, there was a lot of people that were also training for fitness competitions that were straight up cocaine addicts. And it was just buried beneath the surface and nobody would talk about it. Everybody knew about it, but nobody would talk about it. And so because I knew about this, I like justified it in my head. I'm like, I can do cocaine and still achieve my goals because other people are doing it, right? Yeah, that's another story for another day. But I told everybody I was gonna win, but if you peeked back behind the curtains of my life while I was telling people this, I was partying, I was drinking, and I was doing drugs. And I would work my ass off during the week, work on my fitness goals. Friday would come, drugs, drinking. And then I'd work my ass off during the week. Friday would come, drugs, drinking. And I did this for 12 weeks, leading up into my second fitness competition, which was in Australia. I was partying so hard leading up to Australia that I almost took cocaine on the plane when I went to Australia. Like before I had gone, like going into that trip, like I had been partying for like 2 weeks straight. And I wanted to get high so bad, and I didn't want to lose my cocaine. So I literally almost snuck it in my shoe. And I remember being in the security lineup, high as with cocaine in my shoe. It was literally in my right in here. I like stuffed it in my, I cut a hole in my shoe and I stuffed a bag of cocaine in there. I remember going in there and I was like in the security lineup and I was like, dude, if they catch this cocaine, I'm going to jail for like 10 years. And it hit me, I was like, fuck. And then I went to the washroom, took it out of my shoe, snorted as much of it as I possibly could, dumped the rest of it in the toilet, flushed it, and I went on the plane. And I was fucked. shocked like that. I was so fucking high. I got to Australia and I had a week into my competition and I knew that I had a lot of catching up to do. So I went on 0 carbs for 2 weeks, only ate vegetables and chicken and egg whites, stayed on my buddy's couch and just tried to get in the best shape that I possibly could in the 7 days that I had until the show. Long story short, I ended up stepping on stage. There was 50 athletes. I placed 49th out of 50 athletes, so I literally got my ass kicked. I remember when I came back home, I was so embarrassed because I told literally everyone that I knew. I was like, I'm gonna be a champion, I'm gonna be a champion, I'm gonna be a champion, I'm gonna be a champion. And so when I came back and literally got dead last, nobody knew that I got dead last except for me. I didn't tell anybody, but I had like every excuse in the book for why other people were better than me, other than the fact that I didn't put in the fucking work. And yeah, I just couldn't really handle, mentally I couldn't deal with the loss. That was number one. Number two, I was already kind of addicted to drugs at this point because like the entire time I was gone, I couldn't wait to get back and do cocaine. So I was already an addict at that point. So when I got back, I definitely didn't have a finish line because there was no fitness competition and I was coming off of this like mental loss. So I didn't really know how to cope with that. And as a result, I just started partying every single day. And then it got to the point where I used to work out during the week and party on the weekend. But when I came back from Australia, it was party every single day and work out while I was high. Like I used to go to the gym like while I was high and work out. It's a super, super dark time in my life. Ended up getting fired from like every bartending job that I had at the time. I went from partying and having fun to everyone in my life starting to notice that I was an addict. And even the people that I used to party with were like, dude, like you need to like slow down. But I just didn't, I don't have a slow down. Like I don't have a slow down. So I was not really ready to receive anybody's feedback. And it wasn't until I got fired from my last job, called my girlfriend who was also an addict, told her I got fired again. And she literally said to me, she was like, dude, like you're f***ed up, you need to make a change. And I remember being like, I'm f***ed up, like you're just as bad as I am. Like, what are you talking about? And that made me realize, I'm like, okay, like I need to make like a radical shift in my life. I need to do something like drastic or I'm gonna end up in jail or dead. So I went back to my grandma's house that night. And this is a moment I'll remember for the rest of my life. I walked in to my grandma's trailer. She was sitting on the chair looking at me. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd just gotten fired. I was high as hell. And I just burst into tears. And I collapsed on the couch. She was sitting on the chair. I collapsed on the couch. She didn't ask me what was wrong. She just got up, went to the room, grabbed the Bible, came back, held my hand, and read me the Bible and cried with me. And I remember in that moment, I was like, how did I let it get to this point? Number one, and number two, I don't know how this woman still loves me. I don't know. Like, how does she still love me? She still sees something good in me. But guys, that brings us to the end of today's YouTube episode. If you liked this story and you want to hear part 2, stay tuned because part 2 will be coming out next Monday. Peace.